Players like and dislike maps for different reasons. Everyone has their preference, and speaking for myself, I like maps that allow me to create a rotation that, if run perfectly, I can almost completely lock down every critical item. But the key is that I have to run it perfectly, and in Quake Champions, disrupting someone's rotation is far easier with the presence of active and passive champion abilities. This is a video about Ruins of Sarnath, but to illustrate my perspective, I will be comparing it to one of the most classic maps, the Campgrounds, aka DM6, aka Blood Covenant. Blood Covenant is a large map for duel. However, due to its layout, it allows players to get from one side to the other relatively easily, whether you're on the top or the bottom, and without giving the player in control too much of an advantage. In other words, it's a map with one of the most balanced flows. What I said earlier about establishing a rotation and running it perfectly applies to Blood Covenant. A player can control all 3 light armors, the mega health, the heavy armor, and all 6 hourglasses if they run their rotation perfectly. Just running it alone in an empty map takes skill, as you have to maintain a certain speed and navigate a specific path. But doing so against an opponent who can catch you at vulnerable places in that rotation is something else altogether. Every map has a flow, and a player establishes a rotation based on that flow. The rotation that Blood Covenant's flow allows me to establish in a duel is what I love about it. Even when out of control, Blood Covenant's layout also affords you different places to hide or set up traps to ambush a stacked opponent. With that being said, there are no kiting vortexes present on Blood Covenant. What's a kiting vortex? Well, they're basically areas of a map that, due to their geometry and the presence of jump pads, teleporters, and other map elements, essentially allow a player to run away for the remainder of the time limit. One is bad, but can be predictable and therefore overcome with a little bit of luck and skill. More than one can all but break a map. At present, Ruins of Sarnath has 2 of them, one at the heavy armor jump pad and one at the tri-bolt. Another key difference in the flow between Blood Covenant and Ruins of Sarnath is that on Blood Covenant, there isn't a single place where you can stand with rail and enjoy line of sight on the majority of the map. On Ruins of Sarnath, if you score a frag at mega health and have a rail gun, you can essentially trap your opponent at their respawn by standing in one place. Now, don't get me wrong, being able to run up the scoreboard because you scored a critical frag is great. But this should happen because you are controlling the map, not because you are just standing in one place with one weapon. And these are the 2 issues that I want to address in this video. How to reduce the presence of Ruins of Sarnath's kiting vortexes while minimizing the reoccurrence of respawn trapping. And we want to do this in a way that makes the map more enjoyable to play. First, the railgun's central location on Ruins of Sarnath has never sat well with me. Originally, it was where the lower light armor was before it was relocated. I just disagree with where it was relocated to. I suggest taking it out of the center of the map and placing it further to one side of the map, like on Blood Covenant. Doing so will remove much of the emphasis on controlling the center of the map and force players to account for a side of the map that has never gotten much action, the tri-bolt area. Here, it's the presence of the teleporters and the narrow threshold that are the perfect recipe for a player to set up a kiting vortex. But how to change this area in such a way that also improves the map's flow? Well, if we remove the upper teleporter and make the threshold larger, I think we'd be off to a strong start. We don't want to make it too big, because then the player that is out of control will be too vulnerable. We have to make it just big enough so that both players can engage or disengage without feeling like they only have one option, because having only one option, chasing or fighting, creates the circumstances for the vortex, and that's what we want to avoid. Removing the tri-bolt's upper teleporter also makes it so that a player can't just instantly plus back and port to the lower level. We want the player to be able to get away if need be, but not instantly. So now we've removed a teleporter and opened up the threshold connecting this area with the light armor. Beyond this, I would also get rid of this plank and relocate the 25 health bubble here. Now the area is more open and allows players to just drop down and bypass the weapon altogether. On top of that, I might even consider making the area around this weapon respawn into a pit of death. This might not favor the player out of control, but I do feel like this part of the map needs something that forces players going for railgun to be careful, so they can't just grab it and camp back here. Now that we've changed the railgun's central spawn location to where the tri-bolt was, the railgun and rocket launcher are just too close to each other. So to put some distance between them, let's simply swap the rocket launcher and nailgun spawn locations. Doing this would create a more circular balance between the railgun, rocket launcher, and lightning gun spawn locations. And on top of that, I find the nailgun to be highly effective in the eyeball room, especially for fending off opponents until the mega health respawns. And placing the rocket launcher where the nailgun is also puts it in a more protected place, which I think is justified given how open to getting railed players are in the eyeball room. Okay, so where to put the tri-bolt? In the current dual format, there is a single hourglass near the teleporter above the stairs in the lower light armor room. This is where I would simply replace this hourglass with the tri-bolt, giving whoever spawns in this corner more of a lifeline against a railing opponent. Okay, so there you have it. It's 4 altered weapon respawn locations, and a big change to be sure, but one that aims at achieving balance and flow over just parking and aiming at helpless targets. The second vortex involves the heavy armor jump pad and stairs, which are adequately protected due to the surrounding walls being positioned so tightly around the jump pad and the claustrophobic staircase. If you're an air control champion and you're up by 1 frag, congratulations! You get to abuse the lamest kiting vortex in the game. So again, how to reduce the presence of the vortex in a way that makes the map more enjoyable to play. I don't think there's much we can do about the jump pad, and to be honest, I like it the way it is. A player should be able to hide out back here, but once discovered, they shouldn't just be able to drop and sprint up the stairs for a free escape. So it's the staircase that needs to be addressed. I suggest removing the stairs altogether and simply opening this area up to a jump pad, which takes the player up to the eyeball room, or boulders that they can quickly hop up if their movement is perfect, similar to the crates on Deep Embrace that players can hop on to get up from the railgun. This way, a player can still drop, but once they do, it will take them an extra half second to reach the jump pad or boulders. How far back should our jump pad or boulders be exactly, I can't say. It would require some testing. I don't want to remove the ability of a player to escape entirely, but at the same time, if their movement isn't perfect, the pursuing player should be able to land some damage as a reward. This change would also mean that players at the eyeball room will be able to drop down and access the heavy armor room in a much faster and less vulnerable way. So again, if a jump pad or boulders are to replace this staircase, it needs to have tight walling so that the player protecting the heavy armor has the opportunity to deal damage with some well-timed spam should their opponent try to drop in on them from above. In competitive play, that is, when 2 players are picking and banning champions, Ruins of Sarnath matchups are usually pretty balanced, except when it's the 7th and grand final map for QuakeCon and one player gets sore lag and the other is stuck with Keel. In ranked duels, however, if you don't play a champion with a movement modifier, you can easily be sucked into a vortex if you go down a frag, and that's what is mainly motivating these changes. Before we wrap, let's quickly review to make sure we got everything. First was the railgun's relocation from the center of the map to the tri-bolt. The purpose of this change was to force players to go beyond just controlling the center of the map and respawn trapping players after earning a frag at mega health. This change also meant relocating the rocket launcher and tri-bolt, so we swapped the rocket launcher and nailgun spawn locations to achieve a more circular balance, and placed the tri-bolt in the lower light armor room. Next was to rework our new railgun spawn by opening it up and eliminating the possibility of exploiting a kiting vortex. After that, we moved on to the heavy armor room. Here the problem is the narrow staircase that leads up to the eyeball room, so we repurposed it into a more open area with a jump pad or set of boulders, which the player uses to exit the room via its rear-facing side. Okay, so that is going to bring us to the end of part 1, but of the 2 parts, this is definitely the more feasible version that we could walk away from and try it out as is. I hope you enjoyed these videos. Maybe you got some other ideas while we were going through my thought process. So whatever the case, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do enjoy reading your ideas from the other Quake Theory videos. As always, like and subscribe, and I will see you in part 2.